News on several Impact Wrestling talents set to leave the company in the coming months, and an update on the Good Brothers Impact Wrestling contracts. We have the Impact Wrestling ratings and viewership numbers from the post-Rebellion episode on Access TV, and an update on the Inspiration's decision to step away from professional wrestling. All this and more in today's Impact Wrestling News. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of Impact Wrestling. So let's start off talking about contracts and departures. There have been several recently from Impact, and more could be happening in the near future. Now, there's been more talk about potential Impact Wrestling departures in the near future. We spoke earlier on in the month about how the Good Brothers Impact Wrestling contracts are set to expire on Sunday, July 17, which is actually 2 days before Slammiversary, although I would think they will work that show. Now, they signed with Impact to debut at the Slammiversary 2020 pay-per-view on July 18 of that year. They signed 2-year deals, so it's no secret that the contracts are coming up. They spoke about it in interviews, but I remember when, as I spoke before, when the story came out a couple of weeks ago, the Good Brothers, their contracts are coming up. It was like, well, yes. Yeah, I mean, that's quite common knowledge. Nevertheless, people have been asking, what's the situation? Now, when I spoke about this before, I said I would not be shocked if they do not re-sign with Impact Wrestling and they go to New Japan, they go to AEW, or they agree a deal with Impact whereby they're not that they're exclusive to Impact already, because they're not, but Impact has priority on all of their dates. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, if they did decide to stay with the company, it was basically agreed that you don't have priority anymore. We can basically do what we want. So in an update, word going around is that Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson are not close to agreeing a renewal with Impact Wrestling officials for a new contract, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer. Now, obviously, when it comes to Meltzer and Impact, it's very hit and miss. However, I do think this does have some legitimacy to it, because Dave Meltzer is very close to people within AEW, who are therefore going to be very close to people such as Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson. So, and again, that doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me, because as I said before, I just think with the world opening up, and that's the key. Remember when they were released by WWE, it was right at the start of the pandemic. It was April 2020, and there weren't many options available at the time. You know, they could have gone to AEW. There was friction. Absolutely, there was friction there in AEW at the time, because I think some people, such as the Young Bucks most importantly, and Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega, felt at the time that they had been let down by the Good Brothers, because they wanted them to come in when AEW had first started, and the Good Brothers decided to stick around with WWE. Of course, it didn't work out at the time, though. Any heat that they had eventually got resolved, and they started making appearances on AEW programming through the working relationship and crossover angle with Impact Wrestling and AEW. But there was friction at the time, so they didn't have a ton of really options. And that's not to say that they chose Impact because, we had no options, so that was our only choice. No, they still could have made that work, but they decided to make some space and go to a place they felt they could make the best impact, pun intended there. But now that the world is opening back up, now that travel to Japan is much easier than it was when they first signed with Impact Wrestling. Because remember, when they signed with Impact as well, they had it in their contracts that any date they wanted to work with New Japan, they could. And realistically, in Japan, they haven't really had that opportunity because of the pandemic, but that is changing right now. So again, I wouldn't be shocked if they signed big New Japan contracts. I wouldn't be shocked if they went full-time, or certainly if they signed an AEW contract with that New Japan clause that they can appear in New Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't sign anywhere initially and they just try and figure out what's going on. You know, anything's possible, but I think with the state of play with Impact at the moment, I'm sure Impact wants to re-sign them, will make them a very good offer. And the only thing, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if they continue to make appearances in the same case as W. Morrissey did, but it's kind of a case of, but I don't have a deal anymore. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. But the Good Brothers aren't the only people that could be leaving Impact in the near future, because Jonah is also reportedly finishing up with Impact soon. He revealed during interviews this past December that his contract was to run through Rebellion, the pay-per-view that was held last Saturday. It appears the two sides did not agree on a new contract, and word is that Jonah is finishing up. Now, of course, Jonah took a loss to Tomohiro Ishii at Rebellion last weekend. He's going to be facing PCO in a Monsters Ball match on next Thursday's edition of Impact Wrestling, which looks to be the end of their feud. Of course, Jonah debuted at Turning Point back in November, but again, it was stressed at the time that that wasn't going to be his priority place of work. He was more signed to New Japan, and his focus was doing more New Japan shows. And I believe, once again, he'll probably be going over to Japan to be doing more work over there. I think he was signed to a contract with New Japan. He's made several appearances on New Japan Strong and shows stateside, but I think the plan is for him to be going over to Japan, and I think he'll do very, very well over there. I think he's obviously got history in Japan anyway. I think he worked with All Japan in the past. He might have even worked with New Japan in the past. I'm no Japanese wrestling expert, it must be said, but I think he'll do very, very well over there. He's got that classic Japanese foreigner style, the big foreigner comes in, big foreigner heel, and I think he'll do excellent over there. And this was always going to be a short run with Impact, but it must be said, I've really enjoyed his work. I think the feud with PCO, I'll be honest, I was a bit skeptical initially, but I watched the match they had at what was the pay-per-view name? It might have been Sacrifice. When they had a match, they just beat the hell out of each other. And that was a match that had great matches on that show. That's when I had Jay White and Alex Shelley was on that show, and it had featured the return of Josh Alexander and all that kind of stuff. Some really, really good matches. But Jonah vs. PCO, it was just that modern-day big man match that old-timers say you're not supposed to have when they're just doing crazy stuff and crazy spots. And it just, everything looks badass. And I've really enjoyed that. And I'm sure that their Monsters Ball match on Thursday is going to be no different. So that's very excited. Another talent, and it's not just the Good Brothers and Jonah that could be leaving, but another Impact talent reportedly on their way out is Willie Mack, who has been teaming with former Impact World Champion Rich Swann as of late. Now, Mac's been with the company for a while, of course. He debuted with Impact Wrestling in October of 2018 and was on an annual contract where he was supposed to receive a major pay raise into the six figures the following year, but the company was reportedly cutting his contract. There's no word on if Mac will be used on a per-night basis or if he's finished up at the recent TV tapings as he and Swann faced the Bullet Club in tag team action. Now, there's still no word on if AEW or WWE might have interest in signing Mac, Jonah, or the Good Brothers, or if there's a spot for them in Japan. Of course, if we hear any details about that, we'll talk about it here on the channel. When it comes to Mac, again, I wouldn't be shocked if he does stick with Impact in terms of a per night basis, but you have to think about it here that he was on a big contract, and with Impact cutting that contract, which I would assume is a cost-cutting measure, they're back on the road. They do tapings twice a week now, and everyone's got a budget, and with any pro wrestling company, they have to look at their talent and go, are we getting value for money? And if Willie Mack, no disrespect to him, is on a six-figure contract, I would say that Impact's probably not getting value for money. For a company like Impact, if they're on six figures, they should be in the main event, and they should be, carrying that company on their back. And I don't think Willie Mack is doing that. So that'll be interesting. Again, I know every time we speak about contracts and I say, I think they'll leave, or whatever, they're like, why are you saying they'll leave? But I think logic says that they'll leave in this case. Willie Mack, again, I wouldn't be shocked if he sticks around in terms of a per-night basis, but Jonah's, for me, his destination's always been New Japan. He's in New Japan already, but certainly more full-time. And I think the Good Brothers, again, looking in their direction at the moment, looking at the options that they have available now, which they didn't have before, I would not be shocked whatsoever if they end up more full-time in New Japan or possibly in AEW as well. But again, we'll talk about that when we get more information about it. Let's talk about the ratings on Thursday, even though every time I talk about the ratings, people get angry. But Thursday's post-Rebellion edition of Impact Wrestling drew 107,000 viewers on Access TV, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. This is actually down 4.46% from last week's 112,000 viewers for the Rebellion Go Home show. I mean, I say it's down slightly, it's essentially the same. Thursday's Impact drew a 0.02 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic. This is down 33.33% from the prior week's 0.03 key demo rating. Thursday's Impact did not make the Cable Top 150. The prior week's show ranked number 143 for the night with a 0.03 rating and ranks number 132 for the night in terms of viewership on cable. Now, Thursday's Impact drew the sixth lowest audience of the year so far and tied with several other episodes for the lowest key demo rating of the year so far. Of course, the episode featured competition from the NFL Draft and NBA playoffs, and that's the issue on Thursdays. Look, they are struggling when it comes to Thursdays. They are struggling with being back on the road when it comes to spoilers. That's just the nature of the beast. for the moment for Impact Wrestling. Now, Impact's viewership on Thursday was down 10.83% from the same week in 2021, while the key demo rating was down 60% from the same episode that aired 1 year before. The 2021 episode was also the post-Rebellion show, and you have to remember that post-Rebellion show featured Kenny Omega with the Impact World Championship for the first time as well after that winner-take-all match against Rich Swann. So that's the kind of the situation there. So that's what it is for Impact. Again, I think they were doing great numbers. Well, they were doing decent-ish numbers at the beginning of the year, and they were doing great numbers last year. I think now anything over 100,000 is a win, I think, considering the circumstances and considering them being back on the road and all that kind of stuff, and them being in Thursdays in that time slot as well. We spoke about what they could probably do to fix it, but hey, we've spoken about it before. Finally, let's talk about the IInspiration. Obviously, we spoke about the IInspiration the other day. They're stepping away from professional wrestling. They announced that this past week, and new details are emerging about the IInspiration's future plans away from professional wrestling and Impact Wrestling. It comes after their announcement earlier on in the week that they are stepping away from in-ring action indefinitely, although they will be back because everyone comes back at some point. But according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the story going around last week's Impact Wrestling television tapings was that both women want to try acting. One of the women has already landed a new role since news of their departure from Impact Wrestling broke this past Wednesday. Writer, director, producer Michael Matteo Rossi announced Friday that Jesse McKay has been cast in his upcoming feature film, The Charisma Killers. Matteo Rossi is listed as the director and producer. The plot synopsis for Charisma Killers on IMDb reads, quote, "When the old mentor of 7 killers finds out that he has terminal cancer, he gives them all an opportunity at his fortune to prove themselves one night only to exact revenge." And Jesse McKay will play the role of Swinger Wife. No, not Johnny Swinger, Swinger Wife. So that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. They want to pursue acting. Again, I think I spoke about this before. When they came in October, the Impact Wrestling was running once a month, a couple of days a month over a weekend. They were doing the pay-per-view tapings and then the television tapings. That's changed. They run every 2 weeks now. Maybe that schedule's more than they kind of signed up for. Maybe they just want to try something different. You know, I'm sure they can. For ages, they had to wait to make money because they couldn't. They couldn't legally make any money once they left WWE because they had visa issues and their green cards weren't sorted. The moment that they were sorted, they went to Impact, and I think they thought, you know what, we'll keep our toe, you know, in the metaphorical pond when it comes to professional wrestling by doing Impact once or twice a month. But once that becomes more busier and they want to try other things, then they have to give it up. But like I said, I'm sure eventually they'll be back, whether they're back in Impact, AEW, WWE, who knows. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's Impact Wrestling news in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.